We now come to business for today, and I call Patricia Ferguson.
Question number 1, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister or Home Secretary? Minister?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and we wish Mr Speaker all the best in his extremely important visit to all of our parliamentary colleagues in Ukraine. Following the fall of the Assad regime, the Home Office withdrew the country policy information notes and guidance on Syria and temporarily paused interviews and decisions on Syrian asylum claims. This was and remains a necessary step, which several other European countries have also taken. The pause is under constant review, and when there's a clear basis upon which to make decisions, we will start processing them again.
Patricia Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend for that answer. I'm sure she will agree that the UK Government, together with the international community, is looking for a peaceful solution in Syria that puts the people of Syria first. But organisations in Scotland working with the Syrian communities, such as the Scottish Refugee Council, have reported a sense of heightened anxiety amongst Syrians currently in the asylum system, and wonder whether people seeking protection should be kept in limbo any longer than is necessary. We would also have concerns that the pause in decision-making may lead to an increase in the backlog of asylum cases, contributing to the legacy backlog left by the Conservative Government.
Ms Ferguson, is there an actual question?
Certainly is. Would my honourable friend be able to give a timeline for her decision-making?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I understand the heightened anxiety in the Syrian group of asylum seekers, but in order to make decisions about whether particular people need protection, the Home Office relies on the country information, and this is currently in the middle of changing quite profoundly. So when we're in a position to make decisions against new, more up-to-date information, we will certainly do so, and I hope that the Syrian community will be patient with that and not too anxious about the pause that is currently in place.
John Lamont.
Thank you very much. How many hotels in Scotland are used to house asylum seekers?
Minister.
We don't comment on where hotels are, but I can tell the honourable gentleman that there are 216 hotels in the whole of the country, and we will be getting those numbers down as quickly as we can.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many seeking asylum, including from Syria, enter the UK by illegally crossing the Channel. This is, of course, completely unnecessary because France is a safe country with a well-functioning asylum system. So in relation to those Channel crossings, will the Minister now accept the Government's plan to smash the gangs lies in tatters? Crossings are up by 31% since the election. They're about to break 300,000, and the first 3 months of this year have been the worst on record. Does she now accept it was a catastrophic mistake to cancel the Rwanda deterrent before it even started? I was in Berlin last week, and the new German government and other European governments are looking to implement removals deterrents very similar to Rwanda. So will she now do a U-turn and implement a removals deterrent so all illegal arrivals are rapidly removed to a safe third country?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. 84,000 people crossed the Channel from the day the Rwandan deal was signed to the day it was scrapped, and they failed to deter a single boat or deport a single person. Instead, they spent 700 million and sent 4 failed asylum seekers, to start a new life in Kigali with free housing, free private health care, free university education at a cost of £150,000 each. If the honourable gentleman really thinks that paying £150,000 each per removed asylum seeker was an adequate answer to the challenges of small boat crossings, then I don't know what planet he lives on.
Jess Brown-Fuller.
Question 2, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I join the Immigration Minister in wishing the Speaker well in his important trip to Ukraine. The Government has set an unprecedented mission to halve violence against women and girls in a decade, and we've set out new measures, including the first domestic abuse specialists in 999 control rooms, starting the rollout of domestic abuse protection orders, and a new National Policing Centre for Violence Against Women and Girls and Public Protection.
Jess Brown-Fuller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Chichester-based charity My Sister's House supported 28 women in 2015 with vital wraparound trauma-informed support to women. Last year, they supported more than 1,700 women. The charity has raised the ongoing issue of cross allegations where abusers are falsely accusing their victims as a means to keep the control and the emotional abuse going. So what steps is the Home Secretary taking with the Justice Secretary to ensure that the system properly recognising this form of continued abuse and protects victims from being re-traumatised?
Home Secretary.
Well, the Honourable Member raises a really important issue about particularly the way in which coercive control can be manifest and where abusers can use different ways, including actually using the civil courts in different ways as well to continue with their abuse. Part of the reason for introducing the National Centre for Public Protection is in order to have the best possible national standards and training properly for the first time across policing and then working across the criminal justice system in order to keep victims safe.
Paul Waugh.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last week's annual police awards held by the Rochdale District of Greater Manchester Police, the Unsung Hero Award went to Jane Ward, who's a sexual assault advisor, for her role in supporting a rape victim throughout every single day in court, and that victim was rewarded with justice and the rapist being sent down for 12 years. Jane currently supports 150 different sexual assault victims. So does the Home Secretary agree with me that Jane, we should owe her a great deep debt of thanks, and also to all those police officers who helped secure such convictions?
Home Secretary.
Can I thank my honourable friend for that question, and can I pay tribute to Jane Ward for the remarkable work that she is doing supporting victims of the most appalling and vile crimes, helping them to get justice, helping them as they go through the criminal justice system. And I would also pay tribute to police officers working night and day across the country in order to tackle sexual assault and abuse.
Dame Campbell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The ambition to halve the prevalence of violence against women and girls is a laudable one, but could the Home Secretary give some more information to the House about what number will be the starting point which will be halved, and when will she be able to provide more information on that to both the House and to my Select Committee?
Home Secretary.
Well, I thank the Home Affairs Select Committee Chair for her question. We are drawing up currently a strategy on violence against women and girls that will be published before the summer recess, which will set out the approach we need to take, the need to reduce domestic abuse, sexual assaults and also stalking, the crimes that are most prevalent and where women are most likely to be the victims, but we also need to reduce those crimes more broadly. We will set out the details in terms of the measures that we will be looking for as part of that strategy.
Tonia, Antoniazzi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The accurate collection of sex-aggregated data by police forces is essential to address male violence against women and girls. What plans does my right honourable friend have in place for her department to implement the recently published Sullivan Review?
Home Secretary.
I can tell, my honourable friend, we take the Sullivan Review extremely seriously. It is important to recognise the difference between biological sex and gender and to make sure that policing, that the criminal justice system always has the accurate data they need.
Sarah Dyke.
Madam Deputy Speaker, women and girls will never truly be safe while terrifying online influences like Andrew Tate are allowed platforms that radicalise men and boys into extreme misogyny. So what steps is the Secretary of State taking with Cabinet colleagues to support police in tackling violence against women and girls?
Secretary.
Well, the Honourable Member will know that the Online Safety Act measures are being implemented over the course of this year. That includes this summer the introduction of measures expected to ensure that stronger action is taken to prevent children, including to prevent young boys, and including to prevent children more widely seeing inappropriate material that can be very damaging, that can be very extreme, and also we need to work in schools to prevent abuse in relationships.
Emily Darlington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Rape victims were failed under the previous government, and too few actually got to see the inside of a courtroom. Amongst those victims were the victims of Andrew Tate here in the UK, who suffered rape and other violence against them. While I know the Home Secretary cannot comment on the extradition notice that we have with Romania at the moment, what message can she send to those victims who I've met and I know are meeting Minister in the government as well about their day in court and getting justice for them?
Home Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend will know that there is obviously a court case underway currently in Romania, and also that issues around prosecution and extradition decisions are matters for the police and the Crown Prosecution Service. But I know that she has worked herself with victims, including in her constituency, and it's hugely important that victims of appalling crimes, wherever they are in the world, can have a route to justice.
Shadow Minister Katie Lowe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In at least 50 of our towns, gangs of men have groomed and then sexually tortured little girls with astonishing depravity. And still, not one person has been convicted for covering up these institutionalised rapes. Local inquiries cannot summon witnesses, they are being refused by local authorities, and cannot address national policies like deportation. But fundamentally, the government's plan will not cover even 1 in 10 of these towns. Can the Home Secretary explain, please, how she will choose which towns get a local inquiry, and what she will say to those victims whose towns will not be included?
Home Secretary.
Well, the Honourable Member will know that we have asked the police to reopen cases and historic investigations, because it is crucial that where there is abuse, including historic exploitation and abuse, including grooming gangs, there are prosecutions that take place, that the perpetrators can face justice for their vile crimes. We are also supporting both local inquiries and the review by Louise Casey into the scale and nature of exploitation across the country. But I would also say to her, when she refers to issues around cover-ups, we are introducing now the mandatory duty to report on child abuse, including criminalising the covering up of abuse and exploitation, which is something that I called for more than 10 years ago, and I'm really sorry that the previous government never introduced it.
Steve Brace.
Madam Deputy Speaker, question 3.
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With your permission, I will group this question with question 5. The task force is driving forward work to ensure the UK's democracy is strengthened and protected. This includes work to tackle the unacceptable harassment and intimidation of elected representatives. I have recently provided detailed evidence on the task force progress to the Joint Committee on the National Security Strategy, and I will give evidence to Mr Speaker at a Speakers' Conference evidence session on Wednesday.
Steve Brace.
Thank you for that answer. People in Exeter want to be sure that the elections and the referenda we hold are safe and secure from outside state actors who want to manipulate our politics for their own ends. We already know, for example, that Russian disinformation on social media in many African nations is already having a huge impact on their domestic politics. Can the Minister confirm that the task force will be taking into account our own Russia report, and that this government will do everything it can to defend our politics from the malign activities of external state actors?
Minister.
I'm grateful to him for his question. It is and always will be an absolute priority to protect the UK against foreign interference. The government is absolutely committed to safeguarding the UK's democratic processes and has established measures in place to protect it. Whilst there is no room for complacency, despite their best efforts, Kremlin disinformation operations largely fail here in the UK, in part because of the discernment and judgment of the British public, but also because of the actions of our intelligence services.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I declare an interest as a member of Mr Speaker's conference. Does my honourable friend agree that aside from the security measures that are sadly increasingly necessary to protect candidates and elected representatives, it's vitally important that everyone who shares a belief in the importance of defending our democracy plays their part in doing so, and that this must include the following: Parliament, social media companies, the traditional media, the education system, businesses, charities and civil society organisations, so that collectively we can create a healthier and safer environment within which our democracy can flourish.
Minister.
He's absolutely right to say that the defence of our democracy is something that every sector of society, business and the media, needs to play their part in. I can assure him that defending our democratic processes is an absolute priority for this government, and there is work across departments to understand the nature and scale of harassment and intimidation of candidates and campaigners. I can also assure members across the House that the Joint Election Security and Preparedness Unit will continue to coordinate cross-government work on all threats, including candidate security.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The local government minister recently spoke as an iftar hosted by the European Islamic Centre connected to Jamaat-e-Islami and Abu Allah Maududi. The Minister for Social Security attended the Muslim Council of Britain annual dinner, and the Prime Minister hosted Adam Kellick, an imam who celebrated the October the 7th attacks and told followers to pray for victory for Hamas. Why is the government so keen to spend time with and lend legitimacy to organisations and people it says it opposes? And what is the Minister going to say to the Prime Minister?
Minister.
Well, we're not, and I don't agree the proposition of the point that the honourable member has made. All ministers, and of course including the Prime Minister, take these matters incredibly seriously, and we always engage in the most responsible way.
Jim Anster.
Thank you. When Defending Democracy Task Force was established, it was proclaimed that its primary focus was to protect the democratic integrity of the United Kingdom. What work, therefore, has it done on the fact that there's a part of this United Kingdom, namely Northern Ireland, where the democratic integrity of the United Kingdom has been upended by the fact that in 300 areas of law, our laws are made not by this Parliament, not by the Stormont Assembly, but by a foreign Parliament, the European Union? What work has been done to restore democratic integrity to the United Kingdom in respect of Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Well, I can give the honourable member an absolute assurance that we work very closely with all of the devolved governments on this matter. In fact, I was in Northern Ireland just recently to discuss this with the Justice Minister. The work that we're conducting as part of the task force is cross-party and is designed to ensure that we do everything that we possibly can to prevent interference in our democratic processes. That is a matter we take very seriously, and it is a matter that we will work with others on.
Shadow Minister Matt Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I realise my honourable friend was unable to get a meaningful answer, but with Islamist extremism behind 3/4 of MI5's caseload, it's essential to shield our democracy from its pressure. The Minister has repeatedly reiterated the government's non-engagement policy with the Muslim Council of Britain, despite a government minister attending their annual dinner. More recently, there have been concerns about attendees at government events who have publicly expressed some very frightening views. Can the Minister assure the House that the government remains committed to a non-engagement policy with those who seek to promote extreme views which undermine our democracy? And where government ministers go against this, how does the Defending Democracy Task Force respond?
Minister.
Well, I can give the Shadow Minister an assurance that our policy on engagement hasn't changed. I responded on this matter on a number of occasions. What I can say to him, addressing the substance of the issue, is that we will tackle extremism wherever we find it. This government takes these matters incredibly seriously. We will never allow them to be used as a political football. We will address these matters and tackle them head on.
Jessica Toll.
Question number 4, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with your permission, I will group this response with question 13.
In the last year of the previous government, shop theft reached a record high with devastating consequences for our high streets and town centres. The party opposite wrote this off as low-level crime, but this Labour government is determined to take back our streets from thugs and thieves. That's why we're ending the effective immunity for shop theft of goods under £200, introducing a new offence of assaulting a shop worker, and delivering 13,000 new neighbourhood police officers and PCSOs in communities across the country.
Jessica. I thank the Minister for her answer. Many retailers in Bournemouth Town Centre and across my constituency have told me that it is the same people over and over again responsible for shoplifting and putting their staff safety at risk. There is good progress that's been made locally with Dorset Police Operation Shopkeeper and also the Town Centre's bid use of the UK PAC system. But what more can be done to tackle repeat offenders and also to learn the lessons from successful initiatives like these in my constituency?
Minister. Can I thank my honourable friend for bringing to the House's attention the excellent initiative taking place in Bournemouth. It's a real example of the results that can be achieved when you get local authorities, businesses and law enforcement all coming together. And I'm very keen to look carefully at how examples like Bournemouth and what's happening there in the town centre can learn from these best practices and they can be disseminated.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Minister for her earlier answer. Across my constituency, from the co-op in Dartford to the subway on the High Street and pet and garden supplies on Colney Road, I hear the same frustrating tales from business owners and shop workers of how powerless they feel to tackle shoplifting. The measures contained in the crime and policing bill that have just been set out to tackle this problem can't come soon enough. I wonder if the Minister can bring hope to people across Dartford constituency that we will turn the tide against shoplifting after it was very clearly deprioritised by the party opposite.
Minister. Well, again, my honourable friend is absolutely right. When the party opposite left office, shop theft was at a record level, up 40% in the space of 2 years. Now, the Shadow Home Secretary now says zero tolerance on shop theft, even for cases less than £200 of goods being stolen. And yet, in the 2 years that he was the Police and Crime Minister, he left that £200 limit in place. He allowed thieves to escape with impunity. And in the absence of any police, he said that people should make their own citizens' arrest. So while shop theft thawed, all he had to say to the public was basically, you're on your own, sort it out yourself.
Dowden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many constituents in my constituency are exasperated by the fact that when there's shoplifting or burglary, the police are unable to turn up. Yet at the same time, they were able to send 6 officers to get themselves involved with a dispute with a local school and to warn local elected representatives of getting involved. Sadly, this misallocation of resources and unwarranted police overreach is not an isolated example. So can I urge the Minister to avoid engaging in political point scoring and instead join me in sending a very clear message from both sides of this House that our expectation is that the police should be focused on solving real crimes and stay out of legitimate free expression and democratic debate.
I think it's fair to say that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have been very clear about the priorities of this government in terms of tackling crime through our Safer Streets mission. We want to halve violence against women and girls over the course of the next decade. We want to halve knife crime over the course of the next decade. We're going to deliver the 13,000 neighbourhood police officers back into our communities that were decimated under the previous government. The priorities of this government are very clear in tackling crime and policing.
Josh Barronday.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituent lives just 500 metres away from the Tesco Express store in Eastbourne that she works in. She doesn't feel safe leaving as a result of the retail crime there, and so gets a taxi back in the evening, back home. Can the Minister explain not just what the government can do to help protect shop workers like her, but what can big business like Tesco's do to better protect the employees who do such an important role for them and for our communities?
Minister.
Well, I think the Honourable Gentleman makes a very important point. Clearly, there is legislation that's being brought forward to protect retail workers from assaults. But of course, a good employer will want to ensure that their staff are well looked after. And if there are issues about leaving work and needing to take a taxi, I'm sure that good employers would want to address that and support those retail workers.
Shadow Minister Matt Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Honourable Member for Hertsmere has outlined, this weekend we heard the shocking reports that the parents of a 9-year-old girl were arrested by 6 Hertfordshire police officers and placed in a cell for 11 hours because they complained about their daughter's primary school on WhatsApp. At the same time, 270,000 shoplifting cases have been closed without a suspect being identified. Does the Minister agree the police should be able to get on with the job of actually tackling crime on our streets? And can she comment on whether they were getting their priorities right in this case?
Minister.
Well, as the Shadow Minister will know, this is an operational matter for policing, and it's quite clear that the Chief Constable and the Police and Crime Commissioner have set out that there will be a review of what happened in that particular case.
Question number 6, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
So, to repeat what I was saying, under the previous government, violence and abuse towards retail workers increased to unacceptable levels. Everybody has a right to feel safe at their place of work, and alongside Usdaw and the Co-op, who have long campaigned for stronger protections for retail workers, we are bringing in, through the Crime and Policing Bill, a new offence of assaulting a retail worker to protect those hard-working and dedicated staff that work in stores, sending a really strong message that violence against retail workers will not be tolerated.
John Whitby.
Madam Deputy Speaker, on Friday I visited the Central Co-op in Ashbourne, which recently experienced an armed robbery. Elizabeth and Georgia were working when the robbery took place and are still deeply affected several months later. So what action is the government taking to stop violence against shop workers, especially in rural areas where the geographical distances involved often mean police take longer to respond?
So I thank my honourable friend for bringing that shocking case to the attention of the House, and I think all of our thoughts will be with Elizabeth and Georgia for what they've been through. And I also want to applaud the Co-op for the leading role that they have played in helping us to develop this new offence of assaults against shop workers, ensuring that it's not just armed robbery against their staff that's going to get punished, but also the acts of violence and intimidation that far too many shop workers find happening on a daily basis. And on the issue of serious crime in rural areas, our neighbourhood policing guarantee will deliver thousands of neighbourhood police and community support officers across England and Wales, including in rural areas, to speed up response times and build up public confidence and ensure that for those violent criminals who commit acts like armed robbery, there will be no hiding place from the law.
Lincoln Job.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Ashford and Staines, in my Spelthorne constituency, we have a real plague of shoplifting, antisocial behaviour, and Inspector Matthew Walton of North Division is doing a great job with his team in order to tackle it, in combination with both the community and also the retailers. But still the problem is getting worse. After hearing about the success of the facial recognition software rolled out in Croydon, would the front bench please consider extending that to Spelthorne, because it would be a welcome addition to policing in my area.
Minister.
Well, the use of live facial recognition is obviously an operational matter for the police to use as they deem fit. But certainly in my experience of seeing live facial recognition in Croydon, I could see the benefits to policing. It seemed to be a very effective tool that police forces should have in their armoury.
Dave Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Number 7, please.
Home Secretary.
Madam Deputy Speaker, so many of us will know from our constituencies the havoc that can be caused in communities by dangerous and deafening antisocial use of off-road bikes. That's why this government is giving the police stronger powers to swiftly seize those bikes and other vehicles where they're being driven antisocially through local estates and town centres as part of our mission to crack down on antisocial behaviour and make our streets safe.
Dave Robertson.
Thank you. People across Lichfield, Burntwood, the surrounding villages in my constituency, and I am sure across the country, are sick and tired of off-road bikes being used inappropriately, antisocially and dangerously on our streets. The very worst example that I have seen is following somebody doing 40 miles an hour on Eastern Avenue in Lichfield on a quad bike doing a wheelie. I reported that to the police, and the police are following up as best they can, but they're telling me that they need these new powers in the bill. Can the Secretary of State reassure me, my constituents and the rest of the country that this government will not rest and continue to crack down on this problem until our streets are safe for all road users?
Home Secretary.
I do agree with my honourable friend, and I'm sorry to hear about the appalling incident he describes. I think this is a challenge for us in many of our constituencies. For my constituents in Airedale, in Chesterfield, where we see these total nightmare off-road bikes being driven deliberately to harass people. It's why the legislation is so important, and why, if we simply have to wait for the police to give multiple warnings, they can't take the swift action they need. That's why we need to change.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituent Peter from Corfmullen has had numerous run-ins with e-scooters and these off-road bikes. What consideration is the Home Secretary giving to redefining the definition of an electric bike so that it is genuinely an electric bike?
Home Secretary.
Well, the honourable member is right that there are many different forms and changes to the kinds of vehicles and bikes and things that are scooters that are being used now. The legislation does apply not just to off-road bikes, but also more widely to vehicles that are being used antisocially. I think that is important, because the police need to be able to act swiftly and not end up having to try and chase and catch the same people again and again in order to be able to take action.
Steve Young.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Antisocial behaviour is a very significant issue of concern to my constituents in Mansfield, especially with reference to this issue around nuisance off-road bikes and e-scooters. Last Friday, local officers specifically told me that they don't feel that they have the power to pursue the riders of these bikes when they're in their patrol cars, with riders often taunting and even laughing at them because they know they can't easily be caught. I wonder what steps the government is taking to ensure that my local officers in Mansfield have the very specific powers that they need to stop those bikes and bring those people to justice who are terrorising our community.
Yes, Secretary.
My honourable friend is right, and people of Mansfield shouldn't be terrorised by the deliberate harassment by people on off-road bikes. That's why we are strengthening the law as part of the Crime and Policing Act, but it's also why we support the work that some police forces are doing. For example, the work I've seen in Staffordshire, where they were using drones in order to be able to follow those on off-road bikes, to be able to then follow up and to make swift seizures or arrests.
Peter Bedford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. At the weekend, I was speaking to residents of Braunston Town in my constituency. Many of them, particularly the elderly, were frightened of the use of these off-road bikes and similar vehicles, the noises they make and the safety to pedestrians. Will the Secretary of State assure me the government is taking this seriously and they will empower local police forces to bring these people to justice?
Home Secretary.
The honourable member makes a really important point, because often, particularly for older people, the way in which the bikes are just dangerous, the way in which some people are using them, but also the deliberate ramping up the noise in order to intimidate, just deliberately to scare people. That is disgraceful antisocial behaviour. That's why we're increasing the powers for the policing, and why we want to work with policing on things like the drone use and other measures to tackle antisocial behaviour.
Kevin Bonovia.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Question number 8.
Minister.
Thank you. Street theft increased by more than 40% in the last year of the previous government, largely due to soaring rates of snatch theft involving mobile phones. There is clear evidence of organised criminality in these crimes. This is not just about petty criminals and opportunists. That's why the Home Secretary recently convened a mobile phone theft summit with tech companies, policing leaders and the National Crime Agency, and why our Crime and Policing Bill includes a new power enabling police to enter premises identified by electronic mapping if stolen items are believed to be there.
Kevin Bonovia, pronounce.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, on both counts. And I also thank my honourable friend for his answer. Mobile phone theft is a very widespread concern in my constituency of Stevenage. Between 2019 and 2024, the spate of mobile phone theft has risen by 22.3%. Can my honourable friend reassure my constituents that this government will take all its steps to ensure their safety?
Minister.
I can give him that reassurance. Our recent mobile phone theft summit resulted in clear commitments from attendees to work in collaboration to tackle mobile phone theft and the organised criminality driving it. And that's also why our crime and policing bill will give police the power to enter and search premises where stolen mobile phones are believed to be, where it is not practical to wait for a warrant.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the rising numbers of mobile phone thefts has caused great concern amongst many of my constituents. I'm not technically minded, by the way. I know very little about my mobile phone, how it works, I'll be honest. But there are many people who have everything in their phone. Their life is on that phone. Their bank details are on that phone. And for them, if their phone is stolen, then they're in big trouble. Now, they've expressed to me their concerns over the mobile phone thefts. So can I ask the Minister, how will we restore confidence in the general public in relation to mobile phones and having all our details on them? Thanks.
Minister.
I'm grateful to him for his question. I think it is worth reflecting on the impressive results we've seen in recent months from the Metropolitan Police in the work that they've done to intensify action on mobile phone theft. But my honourable friend is right. This is an important subject and we need to see that kind of activity right around the country, including, of course, in Northern Ireland.
Paul Davies.
Question 9, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister.
The Government is committed to tackling rural crime and safeguarding rural areas through tougher measures to clamp down on antisocial behaviour, fly tipping and the theft of agricultural equipment. Alongside our neighbourhood policing guarantee, we are also providing funding to the National Rural and National Wildlife Crime Units, ensuring their valuable work can continue.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Crime rates in rural areas have surged by 32% since 2011, compared to 24% for urban areas, with a total rise of almost 130 reported offences. Rural crime in my constituency includes theft of agricultural machinery, livestock and fuel. The area's remote locations make it vulnerable to such crimes, impacting local farmers and residents. What is the Government doing to ensure rural crime gets the attention it deserves?
Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend for raising this vital issue? And just last month I held a rural crime roundtable in North Yorkshire and met local residents and farmers to discuss this important topic. And last week, in recognition of the success of both the National Rural and National Wildlife Crime Units, I announced additional funding for both units in the next financial year so they can continue to support the police in rural areas. We're also working with the National Police Chiefs Council on the next iteration of the Rural and Wildlife Crime Strategy, and later this year we will be implementing the Equipment Theft Prevention Act 2023 and put the necessary secondary legislation in place. Ahead of this, we will publish the Government's response to the call for evidence on the scope of that legislation.
Sir Roger Gale.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One of the less widely recognised rural crimes is the use of catapults to maim and kill wildlife, and those weapons, of course, are also used in urban settings. I know that the Home Office takes the view that the wildlife protection legislation and the police powers ought to be adequate to deal with this, but patently at the moment they're not. So would the Minister consider reviewing that and possibly amending the police bill to take account of it?
I'm always happy to review legislation and to make sure that it's fit for purpose, and I'd be very happy to discuss this further with the Right Honourable Gentleman.
Sir John Whittendale.
Number 10.
Minister.
Can I thank the Right Honourable Member for his interest in this subject and the Westminster Hall debate that he secured last year. I want to support the police to use live facial recognition safely whilst balancing public safety and safeguarding individuals' rights. The Home Office invested over £3 million in 24-25 to develop a small national live facial recognition capability by purchasing and equipping 10 mobile LFR units for deployment later this year. And I've been listening to stakeholders and will outline our plans in the coming months.
John Whittendale.
While I recognise that the use of facial recognition technology can lead to more offenders being caught, will she accept that the deployment of a permanent network of fixed cameras across Croydon does represent a significant escalation in their use? And would she accept that that makes it all the more important that there should be a clear legislative framework governing their use, which has been debated and approved by Parliament?
Minister.
I fully accept that there is a need to look at live facial recognition. At the moment, the law governing the use of that technology comes from various different things, from human rights to equalities legislation and various other measures. And we want to see if that needs to be brought together. And that's why I've been having a series of meetings over the last few months. And as I said, we will be setting out our plans for live facial recognition in the coming months.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Harlow Police Department have recently done a successful trial into using facial recognition, which has led to some arrests. Does the Minister agree with me that technology can play a vital part in tackling crime, but cannot be a substitute for neighbourhood policing?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with what my honourable friend has said, and that's why we've got our commitment to neighbourhood policing and our 13,000 additional police officers and PCSOs in all of our high streets and communities up and down the land.
Pete Wishart.
Number 11.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Member will know that we take our international obligations very seriously. We are satisfied that the good character policy is compliant with those obligations. We have strengthened our policy to make it clear that anyone who enters the UK illegally, including small boat arrivals, will normally be refused British citizenship. The good character assessment has been a feature of UK immigration law since 1981, and there has never been any suggestion, either now or in the past, that it is inconsistent with our obligations under the Refugee Convention or any other treaty.
Pete Wishart.
One of the most shocking and egregious things this government has done is to impose a blanket ban on British citizenship for all individuals who have entered the UK irregularly without any parliamentary scrutiny or public consultation, effectively disenfranchising all asylum seekers and refugees, including those who have made this country their home for years. The Refugee Council estimates up to 71,000 refugees who have already been granted asylum could now be blocked from securing naturalisation. She knows there are no safe routes to get to the UK, so nearly all asylum seekers have to arrive irregularly. Surely this clearly breaches Article 31 of the 1951 Refugee Convention, which prohibits penalising those seeking protection for their mode of entry.
Order. Members should be respectful and mindful of their language the whole time. Now we need to hear the Minister respond. Minister.
I thank the Honourable Member for his question, and he will know that with the changes that we made, we also explained that each citizenship application will continue to be considered on a case-by-case basis, and the Secretary of State may choose to apply discretion to grant citizenship on an exceptional basis where there has been particularly exceptional or mitigating circumstances, such as modern slavery.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Number 14, please.
Minister.
The Government is today playing host to law enforcement counterparts from across the globe to discuss our joint response to organised immigration crime. The UK is not only hosting that summit, but leading the way in its response to this appalling evil trade, including through new powers introduced in the Border Security Bill, which I know the party opposite voted against.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much. Can I thank the Minister for that response and welcome the increased cooperation with allies on this vital issue. It is critical to stop the dangerous crossings, but without tackling the problem at its source, with aid to tackle famine, conflict and providing safe legal routes, do we not risk the crisis continuing? So how will the Minister work with colleagues across government to address these factors to ensure that we tackle the crisis fully?
Minister. The summit, Madam Deputy Speaker, is dealing with source countries. We have countries all the way along the routes for the smuggling gangs, and we're looking to see how we can cooperate with each other to ensure that the right messages, rather than very slick organised immigration gang advertising, are actually used.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. People smugglers don't just put the immigration system in jeopardy, they exploit the vulnerable and they put lives in danger. There is nothing progressive about allowing the vulnerable to be exploited by these smugglers. Does the Minister agree with me that we should be straining every sinew to crack down on these gangs, and can she update us on her meetings today on this topic?
Minister. Madam Deputy Speaker, I agree strongly with my honourable friend, and that is why today's immigration summit, with 40 different countries cooperating and attending, is such an important event. Today we also announced that we have now returned over 24,000 people who have no right to be here since we came into government, and we've made some announcements tightening up the illegal working regulations to make certain that they apply across the board to the gig economy and to casual workers too.
Lee Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Since the Labour government came to power, over 30,000 people have entered our country illegally, and the Prime Minister says he's very angry about this. But he's not as angry as the British taxpayers would have forked out £1.2 billion a year to keep these illegal invaders in our country. So does the Minister agree with me that anybody arriving here illegally should be detained and deported?
Minister. Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a duty to ensure that those arriving on our shores, if they claim asylum, are properly processed. The party opposite prevented itself from doing that by becoming obsessed about the Rwanda scheme and left us with a huge backlog. We will speed up immigration processing so that we can deal with those people, protect those who have a right to be here, and send back those who have failed. And I hope that the honourable gentleman will welcome the steep increase in returns and removals that I've just announced.
Deputy Speaker, does my honourable friend agree with me that if we're going to fundamentally deal with these illegal gangs facilitating these crossings, that it's not gimmicks like Rwanda, but it's actually international cooperation that's going to fundamentally deal with it? And isn't that why we should welcome this summit that's taking place today, where people are coming together to cooperate to tackle these gangs?
Minister. My honourable friend is exactly right. These criminals are cross-national, very sophisticated, operate cross borders, and in order to respond properly we have to be the same. That is what today's summit is helping us to coordinate.
Cameron Thomas.
Madam Deputy Speaker, question 15, please.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, total funding for Gloucestershire Police for 25-26 will be up to £169.3 million, an increase of up to £11.2 million on last year, including £1.5 million to kickstart the recruitment of additional neighbourhood police officers and police community support officers in Gloucestershire to get those bobbies back on the beat in our local communities.
Cameron Thomas.
I thank the Minister for her response. In 2015, Baroness May of Maidenhead, then Home Secretary, accused police forces of crying wolf over funding cuts. In the decades since, police services across the country, such as mine in Gloucestershire, have never truly recovered from her scandalous cuts to their numbers. Gloucestershire Constabulary is one of the worst funded in the country, victim of an unfit-for-purpose funding formula. Last week, the Chief Constable announced 60 staff cuts as she battles with a £12 million deficit. Will the Minister meet with me and my Chief Constable to discuss those challenges?
Yes, of course I will.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Liz Smart.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Minister has said, getting more bobbies on the beat in Gloucestershire and across the country is crucial to delivering the frontline policing our communities deserve. But recent Freedom of Information figures show more than 1,500 police officers are stuck on long-term sick leave, including 148 in my own Greater Manchester Police Force. On the job, officers witness violent and traumatic events that can damage their mental health, but too many report being left without enough support. What plans does the Minister have to ensure that mental health support is good enough within the police, as it's one of the ways to get officers fit for a return to work more quickly
and be part of restoring proper community policing our communities deserve.
Minister.
The Honourable Lady raises a very important point about the well-being of police officers and police staff as well. We have the police covenant, that's very important, and I want to, I've already had the first meeting around the steps we're taking to improve the work around the police covenant, but fundamentally occupational health is a matter for chief constables in their own forces, and we're very keen that the work that's gone on to improve those occupational health standards continues, and that the well-being of police officers is right at the front and centre of the work that goes on to have a healthy workforce to deliver for us on our Safer Streets mission.
We're now going on to topical questions, and I call Natasha Irons.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Question number 1.
Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today we're hosting in London for the first ever International Summit on Organised Immigration, Crime and Border Security, bringing together source, transit and destination countries who are all seeing the havoc and harm that criminal, smuggler and trafficking gangs cause, undermining our border security, putting lives at risk. As part of this, the UK is also strengthening the law against illegal working in the gig economy, so employer checks will have to be done alongside increasing illegal working raids and returns. And as a result of our work with France, the French cabinet has now agreed to change their maritime rules for the first time so the French authorities can intervene in French waters to prevent boat crossings. We're bringing together ministers and law enforcement from close neighbours, France, Belgium, Germany, but also from further afield, Vietnam, Iraq, Nigeria, Pakistan, China and the US, all discussing today how we strengthen that collaboration to choke off supply chains, pursue illicit finance, take down advertising, disrupt and prosecute these criminals and tackle this vile trade in human beings.
Natasha Iron.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituent contacted me about the difficulty he's facing whilst trying to get what he's entitled to via the Windrush compensation scheme. With victims of the Windrush scandal not entitled to legal aid, a high proportion are assessed as eligible for compensation but can't meet the high level of necessary evidence to prove that they're entitled to it. So will the Minister look again at what legal support can be provided to the victims of this scandal so that we can finally get the justice that they deserve?
Home Secretary.
My honourable friend is right to raise the issues around the Windrush generation who were so badly let down and treated by the Home Office over many years. We have increased the support for claimants of the compensation scheme, support and advocacy, and my honourable friend, the Minister for Migration and Citizenship, would be happy to discuss it with her.
Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Has the Home Secretary seen the police's anti-racism commitment published last week? In it, it says the police do not have to treat everyone the same, regardless of race. And it calls for arrest rates to be artificially engineered to be the same across racial groups. Will the Home Secretary agree with me that this two-tier approach to policing is totally unacceptable?
Home Secretary.
The police operate without fear and favour, and they respond to the crimes that they face across the country and to the perpetrators of those crimes, whomsoever they should be and wheresoever they are. That is the right approach for policing to take, whether they're dealing with the most serious violence that we have prioritised or the neighbourhood crimes in communities. As he will know from the approach that we are taking to the Sentencing Council and the importance there of us bringing forward rapid emergency legislation, we are very clear that there can be no preferential treatment for anyone in the criminal justice system. It's really important that those principles of free and of fair treatment for all are always maintained.
Chris Philp.
Well, I completely agree with the Home Secretary that people should stand equally before the law and everybody should be treated exactly the same, regardless of their race or their identity. I agree with the Home Secretary about all of that. But unfortunately, the anti-racism commitment published last week doesn't say that. In fact, it says the opposite of that. It expressly says, I've got it here, it expressly says, and I quote, "It does not mean treating everyone the same or being colour blind." Now, given the Home Secretary and I agree that the law should be blind as to race, that everyone should be treated the same, will she join with me in putting down an amendment to the Crime and Policing Bill to remove these provisions in the anti-racism commitment, to override them?
Well, the police already have to swear an oath, which is around their impartiality, around policing without fear or favour. That is the responsibility on every single police officer right across the country. And he will know that there are dedicated police officers who do exactly that and will continue to do exactly that to ensure that they treat everyone appropriately and they make sure that everyone faces justice before the law.
Steve Race.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Residents in Exeter, and particularly female residents, have raised with me their alarm at Tory-led Devon County Council's decision to dim or completely turn off 80% of Exeter's streetlights during the night, including on streets and paths to railway stations and bus stops. Many shift workers come home late at night or start early in the morning, and having well-lit routes offers them a sense of security. Does the Minister agree with me that Devon County Council should think again and consult with resident and other groups on a way forward that puts safety of residents at the centre of their decision-making?
Minister. I thank my honourable friend for raising this, and I think it's absolutely key, particularly for shift workers and residents, that they feel safe walking at night, and good street lighting has to be a key part of that.
Liberal Democrats spokesperson Lisa Smart.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Ukrainians in the UK deserve stability after fleeing war, not prolonged uncertainty. Yet almost half report severe stress and anxiety caused by the prolonged uncertainty of their visa status, with 44% having lost a job opportunity, 26% not being able to sign new tenancy agreements and 25% having had a student loan rejected, all because of this uncertainty. Does the Minister agree that this is an unacceptable way to treat those to whom we opened our arms, and will she commit to giving Ukrainian refugees the certainty they deserve with their visas?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Lady will be aware that we continue to stand by Ukraine and also to support those who we have been able to welcome to our country, and that we have provided certainty under the scheme, the Ukraine Permission Extension Scheme that we opened on the 4th of February, and that under that scheme people are able to prove that they have ongoing status through 3C leave during the process of their application.
Rutland.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This month we marked 8 years since the Westminster Bridge attack, a cowardly assault on our parliamentary democracy which killed 5 people, including the late PC Keith Palmer, and injured almost 50 others. As the survivors seek to rebuild their lives, what measures is the Department putting in place to support the survivors and honour the victims of terrorist attacks?
Minister.
I'm very grateful to him for his question. The victims and survivors of terrorism both need and deserve the highest levels of support to recover and rebuild their lives. The Government will set up a new dedicated support hub for victims and survivors, supporting their needs in the immediate and long-term aftermath of a terrorist attack. Proposals for a new National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism will also be consulted on, helping the country to remember and honour those who've been tragically killed or impacted by terrorist attacks.
Charlotte Kane.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Cambridge's Rural Crime Action Team is very successful, but it doesn't have the resources to be available 24/7. Indeed, it wasn't available during the recent hair coursing incursion into my constituency of Ely and East Cambridgeshire. What assessment has the Minister made to ensure the 24/7 availability of these rural crime action teams?
Minister. I was very concerned to hear about that particular incident the Honourable Lady referred to, and of course I announced earlier on that, that there is additional funding going into the National Wildlife Crime Unit and the National Rural Crime Unit to assist forces to provide the cover that's necessary in rural areas.
Mary Clinton.
During a walkabout in Waugh's End with Northumbria's PCC, Susan Dunworth, and North Tyneside Cabinet Member for Community Safety, Karen Clark, I heard how the police, retailers and council are working in partnership to tackle retail crime. However, while larger retailers can provide personal safety equipment for staff, it's not affordable for small retailers. Does the Minister have any plans to help small shop owners with such costs?
Minister.
The Government has announced that we're going to provide £7 million over the next 3 years to support the police in tackling retail crime, including continuing to fund a specialist policing team. And there is £100,000 available to the National Policing NPCC to assist with measures for retailers to introduce to keep their shops and retail outlets more secure. So hopefully that may well be of use.
Topical question should be short. Tessamant.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Office states it takes fraud on visa applications very seriously, but a man who came here on a spousal visa was then arrested 4 times for domestic abuse and left the family home in October 23. Everything's backed up by police reports and social workers' documentation, but in his March application last year, his spousal visa application, he claimed he was still living with my constituent and family home. She's reported this twice to the Home Office.
Question. I think that is good. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very happy to speak to the honourable member about the case that she raises.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Sockets newsagents in my constituency is over 100 years old, but they face closure because of gangs of maxed youth shoplifting. What will the Minister do to help Sockets and ensure that they can stay open?
Minister.
Well, that is totally unacceptable, and that's why we need to get our neighbourhood policing guarantee onto the streets, those bobbies who will work in areas like the high streets and the communities that we know have been devoid of too many police officers for too long because of decisions taken by the previous government. But I'm very happy to discuss that particular case with my honourable friend.
Mr Speaker, under the Police Regulation 2003, officers in Hertfordshire receive an allowance of up to £3,000 and those in Bedfordshire £2,000. Officers in Cambridgeshire are not eligible for the South East allowance despite being in the same Triforce area. The Policing Minister has previously informed me that the Government will give careful consideration to representations regarding the South East allowance, so will she take steps toward the South East allowance to Cambridgeshire Constabulary police officers?
I'm certainly willing to look at representations on that.
Paul Davies.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Following the gripping storyline of adolescence and the rise of incel culture contributing to youth crime, what specific measures is the Home Office implementing to address the root causes to ensure a safer and more supportive environment for young people?
Minister.
My honourable friend is right to raise the programme Adolescence, which many people would have seen, but also some of the issues around rising violence among teenagers. And we're seeing this in a series of different areas, ranging from knife crime to extremism to also violence fixation as well. It is important that we have the stronger measures in the Online Safety Act on protecting young people against seeing extreme violence and inappropriate materials online, but also that we work in schools to prevent violence among young people, including violence in relationships.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Mail Online yesterday reported on the leaking of a National Police Chiefs Council report into the Leicester riots of 2022, blaming Hindu extremism, despite the fact that during those riots 105 Hindu homes were attacked, no Muslim homes, 2 Hindu temples were attacked, but no mosques. So could the Minister actually ensure that this report is published so we can actually scrutinise it and make sure that the blame is put where it should be?
Minister.
I'm grateful to the honourable member for raising this important point. We take these matters very seriously. I'll look carefully at the detail of the point that he's made. I'd be very happy to discuss it with him further.
Douglas McAllister.
Speaker, does the Minister agree with me that the slew of recent successful European sting operations that have resulted in the arrests of prominent individuals involved in people smuggling gangs highlights the crucial importance of international cooperation and signals that Labour's plan to smash the gangs is now working?
Madam Deputy Speaker, hard, tough, cross-border policing takes time, so the party opposite may laugh. But we recently had a joint action day led by German and Belgian authorities where 500 German officers arrested targets and seized dozens of boats and engines, including in warehouses, which the National Crime Agency was targeting. We had a joint action day led by German police in March, which saw 7 arrests in 8 locations, raided and 90 dangerous life jackets seized. This demonstrates a momentum of joint working that is going to put pressure on the criminal gangs.
Clay Gunn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last year across the South West, 77 police community support officers were taken off our streets,
with my local force of Avon and Somerset accounting for 60 of those. They've said this is a direct result of lack of funding, so will the Home Secretary agree to raise this matter urgently with the Chancellor so we can get more money back into frontline policing?
Minister.
Well, the Honourable Lady needs to realise that there's 1.2 billion extra funding going into policing for the financial year starting tomorrow. Previous governments, obviously, they have to account for what they did in terms of not funding the police adequately.
Jodie Gosling.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. When the Secretary of State visited Nuneaton to speak to our local visitors, she knows firsthand the issues that face our residents around retail crime. There was a glimmer of hope. Our town centre officer was having a big impact, but this role now lies vacant, and we have an all-time high reported by our shops and businesses, with a 58% increase in retail crime since January. Now Labour is getting more money into people's pockets. Can the Minister please outline what more can be done to make sure our town centres are safe to spend it?
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is right to raise the issues around town centre crime. It's why we are not only investing more than £1 billion additional funding into policing next year, but also particularly additional £200 million for neighbourhood policing, so we can bring back neighbourhood police into our town centres, having been so heavily cut under the previous Conservative government, and strengthening the powers for those officers and PCSOs as well to tackle the street theft, the shop theft, the crimes that have soared in recent years because, frankly, the previous Conservative government turned their backs.
Thank you. At the Border Bills Committee stage, we Conservatives proposed a new clause which would provide a mechanism for a binding annual cap on the number of non-visitor visas issued by the UK, introducing accountability and transparency. But this was decisively voted down by the opposite benches. The government talks stuff, but does the Home Secretary not believe the British public deserve a transparent and honest answer on what the level of migration will be and as them as a government, rather than just blaming us or saying lower numbers each year?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm staggered by that question because we know that under their watch, net migration reached record highs. We are the ones with a plan to bring it down, and quite frankly, she should be supporting that.
Ewan Steinbank.
Deputy Speaker, Mohammed waited nearly 3 years for a decision on his asylum application, extended by the pause in processing Syrian asylum cases. If the Minister won't end the pause, what interim steps will he take to further support host communities like Falkirk?
Minister.
As I said earlier, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are keeping under close review the current pause in Syrian asylum applications. We cannot decide asylum applications against an in-country policy that is now no longer relevant because of the rapid change that happened in that country. We will resume those decisions as soon as we can.
Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Reports emerging about the Met Police raid and arrest at the Quaker Meeting House in Westminster last Thursday has caused great alarm, particularly because Quakers are renowned for their non-violent and pacifist principles. The incident raises serious concerns about the policing approach towards freedom of assembly, freedom of expression and the right to peaceful protest. Can the Minister tell the House what explanation the Met Police has given her for their actions that night?
Minister.
As the honourable gentleman will realise, this is an operational matter for the Metropolitan Police, and I'm sure that they will provide further commentary at some point.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Will my honourable friend join me in congratulating Dawn Thurkettle and the Rugby Street pastors, particularly the recently commissioned pastors, for all the excellent work they do to lower the temperature on nights out in our town and show kindness and listen to people on our streets, which plays an important role in our community?
Minister.
Absolutely. I'd be delighted to pay tribute to the excellent work of, I think, Dawn and the street pastors. I know that there are many street pastors around the country that do that really important work on nights out, keeping people safe and secure.
Final question goes to the father of the House, Edward Lee.
Will the Home Secretary consider raising in the Committee of Ministers in the Council of Europe the obvious lacuna in the law that under the Refugee Convention you can automatically deport foreign criminals who enter this country illegally, but under the Convention of Human Rights you can't? Surely we can achieve this in partnership with other members of the Council of Europe.
Home Secretary.
Well, the honourable member will know that we have increased the returns and removals of foreign national offenders significantly since the election. The deportations and returns removals had plummeted under the previous government. We are increasing those. I do believe it's right to do so as part of the work within international law is how we have got the new agreement with Germany, which means that they will now go after the trafficking and smuggler gangs and the illegal warehouses in Germany as well. But we need to ensure that we are taking action against dangerous foreign criminals.
That's the end of Home Office questions. I'll give the ministers a few. OK, there are several points of order. Point of order, Chris Philp.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in the first question I asked, I want to be clear that the number I intended to ask about was 30,000 people who have illegally crossed the Channel since the last election, a 31% increase on the previous period, and since the 1st of January, the highest number in history. But to be clear, it's 30,000 since the election.
OK, the Minister, forgive me, the Shadow Minister has got his point on the record. Point of order, Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I asked the Security Minister in my question why the government is spending so much time with and lending legitimacy to organisations and people it says it opposes. The Security Minister replied, "We're not." Now, I'd given 3 such examples. Each of them has photographic evidence. One of them includes the Prime Minister laughing with the man I mentioned in number 10. So can you advise us, please? I have much admiration for the Security Minister, and I'm sure it wasn't deliberate, but can you advise us on how we might correct the record?
I'm grateful to the honourable member for giving notice of his point of order. The Chair, as you know, is not responsible for the content of questions nor the answers. Nevertheless, members should strive to be accurate in the comments they make to the House, and if a mistake has been made, there is procedure for correcting the record. There are no further points of order, so I let the front bench swap over.
Thank you.